My question is, given that we have paper ballots in Michigan, why on earth did you not ask for a recount?
Well, there'd be no reason to ask for a recount because you just recount the same fraudulent ballots. Once you have separated the envelope from the absentee ballot or mail-in ballot, you are forever unable to audit them. That's the reason why it is so critical that they be inspected. That's the reason why from time immemorial that's been done and honored by both political parties and honored in the breach by your political party this time nationwide. 71%. There is no way, when they recounted in Atlanta, they just recounted all of the same fraudulent ballots. There's no way to trace those ballots, and that's why the inspection is so critical. And that's why, please don't, I don't need
help. Sir, please,
let's
allow the conversation. Let's stop yelling in the crowd. Thank you.
And the reality is, if your political party had not bullied, pushed people around, intimidated people, and stopped them from doing their job as inspectors, this would not have happened.
Thank you. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Giuliani, this committee heard testimony from a bipartisan group of county clerks in Michigan. One was a Democrat and two were Republicans. They testified that they found no evidence whatsoever of widespread irregularities in this election. Your team has now lost 39 court cases in the aftermath of the election, with judges ruling that there is inadequate evidence to support the sweeping claims that you are making and repeating here tonight, and the unprecedented relief that you are seeking. Yesterday, we learned that U.S. Attorney General William Barr has similarly found no evidence whatsoever of widespread irregularities that are worth investigating. If our local clerks, state and federal judges across the country, and the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the United States cannot find any substance to or any merit in any of your arguments, why should we? Why should we sit here in this show that you are partaking in and taking around the country if no one has found any evidence whatsoever of any of your wrongdoing? And why should we not believe the reported attempts of you to try to seek a pardon from the president?
What was the last part?
That last part is not.
You're attempting to seek a pardon, so why is this not part of that?
I will ask that he be disciplined for that. First of all,
hold on.
First of all, what he says is untrue. Second, that is a defamation of my professional character. Do you allow that? Do you allow that to happen in your legislature?
As I said
reported.
As I said, Representative, let's keep it limited to the germane issue here. So, Mr. Giuliani, let me ask
the record. We haven't lost 39 cases. We've only brought 3. So you're wrong about that. Second, the reason why people are reaching those conclusions is because, like you, they don't have the discipline, maybe the intelligence, I don't know, to read through this, and to read 20 more like it. You can't tell me there's no evidence when I have a couple of thousand affidavits from people. You can't tell me that your credibility is better than the credibility of those people. They swore under oath. You didn't. And you seem very, very free to lie.
Mr. Giuliani, I'm just
you have a point of order?
I'm just hoping to get an answer to the other questions about Mr. Barr and others who have disproven a lot of.
I gave you the answer.
You have a point of order?
The answer that I gave you is they didn't bother to interview a single witness. Just like you, they don't want to know the truth. Well, you probably know the truth. I'm worried about their not wanting to know the truth.
You stupid.
Thank you. Representative C.A. Johnson.
Well, I want to take the time to thank everybody and to thank you, Mr. Giuliani. And I will take the time to just give some quotes that some of my constituents made today. Our elected officials should be condemning.
Question, Representative?
Sir.
I'm asking you, what is your question?
No, I don't have a question. I would like
If you don't have a question, then we're going to move on, Representative.
No, that is not fair, sir.
Representative Riley,
our elected officials should be condemning, not...
I'm sorry, you're out of order, Representative. You're out of order. You're out of order. You don't have a question. You're out of order. Representative, you're out of order. You're out of order, Representative. You're out of order, ma'am. You're out of order, Representative.
You stupid.
Representative,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Giuliani, before you
I'm going to
began,
gavel this. The question is for the witness. As I told you at the end, you're able to ask a question to Mr. Giuliani.
we have three people actually before our panel today. And each of them is
Representative,
before our panel. And
I'm
I
at-
know that you gave your power away to Mr. Giuliani to ask questions during this part of the testimony. That's fine. But it is now my right as a representative to ask a question of the people before our committee. This is not for
Representative,
this is
you're
not
out of order.
This is not
If you
Four
do not
Seasons
have a
landscaping.
question,
This is a
Representative-
committee of the state legislature. I should have a right to ask a question of who is before us.
I will allow you to ask a question at the end of Mr. Giuliani, as I stated at the beginning. If you have a question for the witness, Ms. Jacob, please ask it. If you don't, then I'm going to move on.
Ms. Jacobs, I know that you've given testimony previously. We've heard your story in the media. I know that you gave testimony yesterday as well. Judge Kenny in Wayne County Circuit Court,
May I ask?
Did not
has-
give testimony yesterday.
I apologize.
Okay,
I apologize.
yeah, Representative,
I
please
apologize.
tell us your
That's
question.
very misleading.
You've asked a lot of misleading questions yourself, Mr. Giuliani. I
Representative
appreciate that.
Camilleri, please, what is your question?
My question, Ms. Jacobs, is Judge Kenny has ruled that your testimony in court is incorrect and not credible. So why should we believe anything that you said here today?
I'm not aware of any such ruling. She's never been a witness in court. It would have been impossible for a judge to
Your
rule.
affidavit was ruled
May I please finish?
incorrect and not
May
credible.
I have the courtesy of finishing?
What,
She has never been a witness in court, so no judge could ever have assessed her credibility.
what is your question, Mr. Camilleri?
Why are we listening to your story here today if it has already been ruled incorrect and not credible by a judge in court?
It has not been ruled.
It has. Well, This is
Okay,
not a courtroom, Mr.
Representative,
Giuliani. This is a committee. Why do you keep objecting to what I'm saying here?
Representative, is there an answer to that?
Okay, you can go and ask the judge who denied that, okay? I don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Representative C.A. Johnson.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for your vote.
Please, let's let her ask questions.
Mr. Chair, when we get a chance, I'd like to have this kind of even because we have a Detroiter.
Representative, I think you made that point earlier,
Oh.
and as I said, we're going to have more hearings, but what is your question?
No, I would like to have her address this body.
Okay,
She is a
we're
Detroiter.
going to move on, Representative, if you don't have a question.
Mr. Chairman, this represents the affidavits of the witnesses that we didn't have the time to call.
Yeah, make sure that button's
I'm
pushed.
sorry.
Thanks. Go
This
ahead.
represents the affidavits of the people that we didn't get a chance to call. There are hundreds of them, and they specifically allege similar acts of fraud, very similar to the witnesses that you heard. I find it puzzling that there seems to be such confusion about it. Maybe because of my background as a prosecutor, it's pretty obvious to me what happened here. The Democratic leader in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or in Philadelphia, or in Detroit, or in Las Vegas, or in Phoenix, or in Milwaukee, or in Minneapolis, or in Atlanta, didn't wake up on election morning when all those mail ballots were going to come in and decide we're going to shut out all the Republican poll watchers, or as many as we can. I mean, we've been counting absentee ballots forever. I did it myself when I was a young lawyer. Republican sits on one side, Democrat sits on the other side. We don't have any problem with it. This was uniform shutting out of as many Republicans as possible. In Pennsylvania, 890,000 ballots were cast secretly, with no Republican getting a chance to take a look at the ballot. And in Pennsylvania, there are 600,000 more votes counted, mail votes counted, than mail ballots they can find. This is a swindle. It's a con job. It's a theft of an election. And it was carried out by the same method in the city of Detroit. And with all due respect to Detroit, several analyses of corrupt cities, my city, New York, comes ahead of Detroit. So I'm not saying this with any pride, but it happens to be one of the most corrupt cities in the United States. On any measure, I just checked online here, it comes in 4th, 5th, 3rd, 7th, 8th. Several times New York comes in ahead. So I wonder why the confusion about what happened. They stole the election. Not the first one they stole, not the last one they're going to steal unless you do something about it. But you do something real, not, let's see how we're going to fix it. You've been fixing it for years, and it hasn't gotten fixed. They've been stealing elections for years. And this time, they got a chance to steal it really big because of the ridiculous mail ballot that was created. Back in 1960, the mayor of Chicago, the most corrupt city in America, by the way, just in case, on all the lists, by far, we can all feel better. Chicago's the most corrupt. He helped to steal the 1960 election by holding back the ballots in Chicago so the Republican ballots would come in, and then along with a gentleman named Sam Giancana, they got the ballots they needed to elect their candidate. Last year, 2 years ago in Florida, the same thing happened in Palm Beach and Broward County. It was a 2-point election, Senate, governor. Palm Beach County took 2.5 weeks to report. And finally it ended when they caught a truck like the one coming from Bayport, New York to Philadelphia. They caught a truck in Jacksonville headed to Palm Beach with 100,000 ballots that pretended to be Palm Beach ballots, but they were done up in Jacksonville. And then they had to end the election, and they prosecuted the people in Palm Beach. And remember, this year, we had no problem in Florida. I mean, you were counting for an eternity. Florida was over with that night because the governor had the courage to straighten it out. He had the courage to prosecute the people who committed the fraud. You don't end fraud by prospective measures to deal with fraud. You know how you end fraud? You put criminals in jail. That's how you end fraud. You have the courage. You have the courage to say that certification that was done by your state is a complete phony. It's a false statement made to the United States government. Those are prosecutable, by the way. That's not the vote by any means in Michigan. That's not the vote in Michigan. I don't know what the vote in Michigan is, but it's at least 300,000 or 400,000 votes off from what the real vote in Michigan is. And you heard the anger and the upset of your citizens. They seem to have more passion about it than you do. They figured out what happens because they live on the street. They know what happens in Detroit. Don't scratch your head about what happens in Detroit. They steal elections in Detroit.
Representative, you'll have an opportunity.
And they steal elections
to ask a
in New
question.
York, and they steal elections in Boston, and they steal elections in Philadelphia. And the Democrats were smart enough to pick 10 corrupt cities to play their game out. 10 cities in which they could get away with it. 10 cities in which they could go into court and find a hack judge that will decide anything they want. So, I mean, we can live in this strange world all we want, but we're getting at the point where our freedoms are beginning to be eroded. Our right of free speech has been eroded substantially by the censorship imposed by big tech, big media, big corporations, and the Democrat Party. Our right of freedom of religion, with the ridiculous dictatorial way in which the COVID regulations are imposed on us, like they like to be dictators, these Democrat governors, they're taking away our right of the freedom of religion. Those are basically the two reasons we founded this country. Oh, by the way, there was a third, the right to freely and honestly elect our government. And they're taking that away from us too. It should not go without notice. And you should spend time taking a look at Pennsylvania, Look at Philadelphia. Look at Pittsburgh. Look at how eerily similar it is to what these people testified to. Read the rest of these and see that there are hundreds of people that back them up. That election center in Detroit was a disgrace. You should be ashamed of it as citizens of Michigan. I would be ashamed of it if it was in New York, and it could easily be in New York. And I would do everything in my power to make sure it never happened again. And I would never certify an election or have my name associated with anything that was false. Now, it is your responsibility to do that. Not the governor, not the Secretary of State. You were given that responsibility by our founding fathers. They decided who would be the final arbiter, who should overlook a presidential election. And in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, the power is given to you. In the McPherson case in 1892, the United States Supreme Court made clear that you can take that power back any time you want to. Yes. Anytime. You can take it back tonight. You can take it back the day before the electors go down to Washington. You can take it back any time you want. And in case you think it's old law, it was reiterated in Bush v. Gore. You have the right to take it back. You are the final arbiter of how honest or not your election is in your state. And it's your responsibility to stand up to that. And all I can tell you is, we let them get away with this. I don't know what happens after this. This was a concerted plan to fix this election. There's no way that Donald Trump was ahead by 800,000 votes going to bed at night, that he was ahead here by 300,000 votes, that he was ahead in Wisconsin by 400,000 votes, that he was ahead in every state, that over a 4 or 5 day period with this ridiculously corrupt system of counting, they turned around with ballots coming in the back door, ballots being driven down from New York. There's no way that this wasn't stolen. And what it takes is courage. Courage. Not to be afraid of what's happened to these poor people. They've got guts to stand up to what the Democrats do to them. And it's not just the wild and crazy left-wing Democrats who do it. They do it as a way of bullying us. You can see their behavior in this hearing. I can see the difference in behavior between two sides. Maybe sometimes we're too nice. Maybe sometimes we're too decent. Or maybe we shouldn't change. But one thing we should have is we have the ability to defend ourselves and not let our people get kicked around the way those Republicans were kicked around. They wouldn't let it happen, and we shouldn't let it happen.
Thank you.